In the early blush of a new dawn, a day marked by the convergence of hope, ambition, and enigmatic omens, Ethan's life took an unforeseen twist. On the day he celebrated his dual triumph of graduating from both college and law school, a mysterious package arrived at his doorstep. It was not merely a token of academic achievement, but rather a harbinger of a strange destiny. As he stepped into his modest bedroom later that evening, his eyes were met with an astonishing scene. There, lying on the rumpled sheets, was a woman. Her face, serene in the quiet of sleep, bore an uncanny familiarity, as if echoing secrets from a forgotten past. In that moment, a burning heat surged through Ethan's veins, a sensation that mingled passion, confusion, and a profound familial duty. Without a second thought, he accepted this baffling gift, a symbolic offering from his own sister, whose intentions remained shrouded in mystery. The morning light found Ethan alone in his room, the spectral visitor having vanished without a trace. All that remained was a single ominous crimson stain marking the otherwise pristine bedsheet, a silent testimony to the inexplicable events of the night before. In the ensuing years, as life carried him through its myriad twists and turns, the memory of that surreal encounter dimmed, yet never entirely faded. Fate, with its inimitable penchant for irony, orchestrated a chance reunion between Ethan and the very woman whose presence had haunted his dreams. Their meeting was unplanned, laden with a tension that belied the intervening years. With tears glistening in her eyes, she revealed a truth that shattered the veneer of his carefully ordered existence. They had borne a child together, and now that child urgently required the sacred connection of his blood. For over 3 decades, Ethan had dismissed the allure of romance and the complexities of love, never imagining that a single encounter could unravel the tapestry of his indifferent life. Across town, far removed from Ethan's inner turmoil, Isabelle wrestled with her own demons. Employed at a bustling flower shop in a quaint part of the city, renamed here as Rosewood Lane to veil its true identity, she navigated a world of constant financial hardships and heart-wrenching decisions. With every step she took on the cracked sidewalks leading to her humble abode, Isabelle's resolve grew firmer. Her words, though softly spoken, carried the weight of a determined soul. At least this way, I can do something. The choice to forfeit her virtue for a greater cause was not made lightly. In the quiet moments between her labors and the relentless ticking of the clock, Isabelle confessed to her closest friend, Rachel, her desperate yearning to secure a better future, not just for herself, but for their ailing mother, whose life hung in the balance. Rachel, ever the voice of caution and empathy, could not mask her worry. "Aren't you afraid?" she implored, her tone laced with both concern and disbelief. "This decision binds you to a man whose reputation is as murky as the midnight shadows. Ethan Eleanor, of all people, think carefully before you surrender to this dangerous bargain." But Isabelle, her eyes glistening with both determination and trepidation, replied in a trembling yet resolute tone, "I have made up my mind, Rachel. I cannot stand idly by while Mom suffers. The money, $500,000 offered by Ms. Victoria, our enigmatic boss, could be the miracle we so desperately need. It's more than enough to mend the fractures in our lives and even set us on the path to rebuilding a future once thought lost." Their conversation, punctuated by light banter and heavy-hearted confessions, unfolded as the two friends walked the worn-out paths of their neighborhood. Rachel teased about their daily walks, jesting that perhaps the routine might slim them down to an almost identical frame, yet her laughter masked a deeper sorrow. Isabelle's own heart ached with the weight of her sacrifices. "I can't bear to lose the only parent I have left," she whispered, her voice a fragile mixture of love and resignation. The day wore on, and as the golden light began to wane, Isabelle arrived at her modest home, a dwelling that bore the scars of hardship yet exuded a quiet dignity. Inside, the absence of her mother was palpable. The once vibrant household now echoed with silence and the forlorn creak of an empty corridor. Her mother, Helen, whose battle with breast cancer had become a daily torment, remained confined within the sterile walls of a local hospital, a place where even a momentary visit was barred by the harsh demands of unpaid bills and the oppressive fear of indebtedness. Within the cramped confines of her own room, Isabelle whispered a silent promise. "Just a little longer, Mom. I will gather enough money for your operation. Your strength will be reborn." The promise was laced with both hope and despair, as memories of her once robust mother, full of life and vitality, mingled with the stark reality of illness and financial ruin. In the solitude of that evening, after a meager dinner and the warmth of a hurried shower, Isabelle embarked on her nightly journey, a pilgrimage along dimly lit streets towards the hospital. She waited anxiously for Rachel, who had promised to join her, though time was slipping away and the night grew colder. Eventually, as the clock neared the early hours of the morning, Rachel arrived, her presence a welcome reprieve from the solitude. Their journey resumed, this time marked by playful teasing, Rachel joking about the potential slimming effect of their long walks, but underlying every laugh was a shared understanding of their precarious reality. Upon reaching the flower shop, now rebranded as Petal and Bloom, an elegant yet modest establishment, the pair exchanged greetings with Miss Victoria, their striking and ever-astute boss. With a tone both affectionate and firm, Miss Victoria inquired about their morning sustenance, revealing a genuine care that belied the cold economics of their situation. Rachel's admission of neglecting breakfast set the stage for a small errand, a favor to fetch takeout from a nearby diner, a task she accepted with reluctant cheerfulness. As Ms. Victoria handed Rachel a surprising sum, a wad of $3,000, the air seemed to thicken with the gravity of promises made and debts incurred. Once the errand was completed, Ms. Victoria turned her attention to Isabelle. The boss's query, seemingly casual at first, delved into the intricate personal matters of the family. With a mixture of curiosity and desperation, she probed about Ethan's mysterious nature. Is he truly as indifferent to the charms of women as he appears, despite his achievements? Ms. Victoria asked, her eyes glinting with a secret purpose. In that moment, Isabelle's resolve crystallized. "Yes, ma'am," she declared, her voice firm despite the tremor of uncertainty that danced at the edges of her mind. The following exchange was a turning point, a pact sealed with the exchange of a thick envelope bursting with bills that promised to pay for the hospital's insurmountable debts. As tears welled in Isabelle's eyes, the realization struck her with both relief and dread. She had traded a piece of her soul in return for a lifeline that might save her mother. In a hushed, almost conspiratorial tone, Ms. Victoria confided further. "I have arranged everything for tomorrow. We must confirm Ethan's true nature, whether he truly harbors an aversion to women. It would be a tragedy to see the bloodline of the Eleanors end prematurely if he proves unworthy." Isabelle, overwhelmed yet resolute, managed only a quiet expression of gratitude and determination. "I owe you more than words can convey, Ms. Victoria," she murmured, her voice thick with unshed tears. The pact was made, and as the day's work at Petal and Bloom came to a close, Isabelle's thoughts turned inward. Though the night promised little solace, she could not escape the haunting reality of her mother's frailty. Later that night, as the neon lights of the city blurred into a tapestry of shadow and hope, Isabelle found herself in the sterile corridor of the hospital. There she encountered Nurse Amelia Quinn, a kind, weathered soul who had promised to keep a vigil over Helen. The nurse's grave expression only deepened Isabelle's worry, as she learned that her mother's condition was deteriorating. "Your mother is in dire need of an operation," Nurse Amelia confided in a hushed tone, each word laced with urgency. The news struck Isabelle like a physical blow, her heart contracting with fear and sorrow. Yet, as Nurse Amelia placed a comforting hand upon her shoulder, Isabelle's resolve hardened further. "I must do this for her," she vowed silently, gathering the scattered remnants of hope and courage. Inside the hospital room, the sight of her mother was both heartbreaking and galvanizing. Helen, fragile and diminished, offered a pained smile as her daughter approached. "Isabelle, my child," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the steady beeping of machines. With trembling hands, Isabelle pressed her mother's hand to her lips, promising in a choked voice, "You're going to have the surgery, Mom. Ms. Victoria has entrusted me with the means to save you. Please, hold on." The moment was both tender and fraught with despair, a silent plea for healing amid a maelstrom of financial and emotional burdens. Soon, the steady cadence of hospital routines resumed. Doctors and nurses hurried about, preparing Helen for surgery as Isabelle found herself retreating to the hospital chapel for a desperate prayer. In the dim light of the early hours, her whispered invocations mingled with silent tears as she sought solace in faith and the hope of a brighter future. When the surgeon's assistant finally emerged from the operating room, announcing that the procedure had been a success, A wave of relief swept over Isabelle. Though Helen was now in the intensive care unit, her condition had stabilized, a small but significant victory in the long and arduous battle against her illness. After a brief visit by Helen's bedside where Isabelle murmured promises of new beginnings, including the dream of opening a modest laundry shop in honor of her mother's wishes, she left the ICU with a heavy heart yet determined spirit. A few tender moments later, Isabelle expressed her gratitude to Nurse Amelia, offering a small token of appreciation that was gently declined. "It is my duty to help," Nurse Amelia replied warmly, and in that embrace, Isabelle found the strength to continue on her perilous path. Before the night could fully surrender to dawn, Isabelle returned home, hastily showering and gathering her scant belongings. Within a short while, a sleek car arrived arranged by Ms. Victoria to whisk her away to a high-rise apartment in the bustling heart of the city, now known as Meridian Towers. In the opulent lobby and the hushed corridors of that towering edifice, Isabelle trailed behind Ms. Victoria like a shadow, every step heavy with trepidation. Finally, they reached a secluded door. "Come in, Isabelle," Ms. Victoria commanded softly. "Ethan will be delayed. Go take a shower and then wear what's in this bag." Extending a paper bag that concealed an intimate set of lingerie, Ms. Victoria's tone brooked no argument. Inside a lavishly appointed bathroom, Isabelle obeyed without protest. Stripping away her worn clothes, she allowed the warm water of the shower to envelop her, a transient refuge where she gathered the courage to face the day ahead. As steam rose around her, her thoughts swirled with doubts and fragile hopes. Would this fated encounter finally mend the fractures in her life? Could she truly reconcile her desperate sacrifices with the man who seemed so aloof, yet held the key to a mysterious legacy? With a quiet prayer and trembling resolve, Isabelle emerged from the bathroom, the soft fabric of the lingerie a symbol of vulnerability and defiance intermingled. Her heart pounded as she prepared to step into a role she never imagined, a role that might alter the course of both her destiny and that of an entire family. The sticky note left by Ms. Victoria on the bedside table, with its terse yet urgent message, "You can do this," echoed in her mind as she braced herself for the impending confrontation with fate. In that quiet, charged moment, Isabelle's spirit flickered between despair and determination. The long, uncertain night was far from over, and as she waited for the arrival of the man whose very name had become synonymous with her shattered dreams and unforeseen hopes, every beat of her heart whispered a silent promise that even amidst the cruelty of fate, love, sacrifice, and redemption might yet triumph. In the stillness of the night, as a cool breeze whispered through the partially open window, Isabelle stood motionless in the dimly lit room. Her heart pounded as she steadied herself, taking in deep, measured breaths. The weight of the decision she had made, the sacrifice of her own dignity for the promise of salvation, pressed heavily on her shoulders. With trembling hands, she reached for the paper bag that lay beside her, its surface crinkling softly under her touch. The bag, innocuous in appearance, held within it the delicate garment that symbolized the sacrifice she had chosen, a piece of sheer lingerie that felt both foreign and intimately charged with meaning. Gathering her courage, Isabelle slowly peeled open the bag. As her eyes fell upon the almost translucent fabric, a shiver ran down her spine. The material, delicate and ethereal, brought with it a bittersweet reminder of the path she had embarked upon. With a deep, shuddering breath, she gathered the courage to slip the garment over her skin. The cool sensation of the fabric against her body ignited a complex blend of vulnerability and resolve within her. Brushing her hair back with careful, deliberate motions, she made her way to the expansive, meticulously kept bed, a bed that now exuded a clean, comforting scent, reminiscent of fresh linen and hope. Isabelle lay down on the bed, her thoughts swirling like autumn leaves caught in an unseen current. The silence of the room was punctuated only by the slow, measured beat of her heart. Nervous anticipation gripped her as she waited for the sound of a door opening, for some sign that the man who was to change her destiny might finally appear. Minutes turned into an hour, and still the silence remained unbroken. Fatigue, born of days filled with restless nights and overwhelming responsibilities, began to overtake her. With her eyes growing heavy and her consciousness wavering, she finally succumbed to a fitful slumber, her dreams a tangle of unspoken promises and uncertain futures. Half a world away, in the sleek, modern confines of his office, Ethan sat before a large mahogany desk, his brow furrowed in a mixture of irritation and bemusement. His phone, cradled between his ear and shoulder, crackled with the sound of his sister's determined voice. "I really don't need a gift, Victoria," he insisted, his tone edged with both defiance and genuine exasperation. "I can buy whatever I need." Vidia's response came with a hint of playful reprimand. "This is my first time giving you a present as your older sister, Ethan, so be thankful and don't complain," she chided, her voice both stern and affectionate. Ethan's shoulders slumped slightly in resignation. With a small, reluctant shrug, he rose from his swivel chair, straightened his perfectly pressed suit, and acquiesced to his sister's insistence. "Fine, fine. So, where is this gift of yours?" he asked, his voice laced with cautious curiosity. "It's waiting for you at your apartment," Victoria replied with an enigmatic smile that concealed as much as it revealed. "I promise, dear brother, you've never received a present like this before. Better hurry or it might get offended and leave." Her laughter, light and teasing, echoed through the phone line before she ended the conversation abruptly. Ethan, now armed with a mix of curiosity and a hint of apprehension, retrieved his phone once more to deliver a playful warning. "This better not be some prank, Victoria. You know me," he cautioned, his tone both stern and laced with a trace of amusement. "I'll find a way to pay you back," she retorted with a dismissive snort, leaving him with no choice but to relent. After a brief pause, Ethan left his office and made his way to the parking lot, retrieving his SUV keys from security with methodical precision. The drive to his apartment was marked by an inner dialogue, one that wrestled with the uncertainty of the night ahead. His mind wandered momentarily to Noah, one of his closest friends, who had just called inviting him out for a drink. Ethan's response was curt. He was in no mood for diversions. Instead, he suggested that Noah call their mutual friend Lucas, a plan that was quickly agreed upon before he ended the call and resumed his journey. As Ethan's SUV wound through the quiet streets of the city, his destination loomed ahead, the apartment building where he often found temporary refuge from the demands of his high-powered career. In the basement parking lot, he stepped out of the vehicle and made his way directly to his apartment door, unlocking it with a sense of practiced familiarity. Inside, the spacious living area appeared untouched, meticulously arranged yet strangely devoid of any hints of the mysterious gift that had been mentioned earlier. His eyes narrowed in mild annoyance as he searched every corner until a sudden, inexplicable impulse drew his gaze towards the door of his bedroom. Hesitating only for a heartbeat, Ethan opened the door and froze in disbelief. There, lying gracefully on his bed, was a woman of striking beauty, fast asleep. The soft curves of her legs, exposed in the gentle glow of the ambient lighting, caught his eye and made his throat dry with a mix of desire and astonishment. Slowly, as if in a trance, he approached the sleeping figure. Despite the chill in the air, a remnant of the room's air conditioning, the beads of sweat began to form on his skin, testifying to the rising intensity of his emotions. Unbuttoning his tie with deliberate slowness, Ethan's eyes roamed over the serene, angelic visage of the stranger. She stirred slightly, shifting onto her back, and with that small movement he murmured under his breath, "No bra." The remark, innocent in its observation yet laden with unspoken implications, was a turning point in his understanding. In that moment, the truth crystallized in his mind. This arrangement, orchestrated by Victoria, was a calculated attempt to prove something about his preferences. For years, whispers had circulated about his supposed indifference to women, a notion Ethan had always dismissed as a mere consequence of his dedication to the family business and legal practice. In reality, he was selective, not indifferent. Seated on the edge of the large bed, Ethan reached out with gentle care, intending to cover the mesmerizing figure with the soft, cool blanket. Yet in an unexpected turn of events, the woman's arms wrapped around him with a fervor that sent a surge of warmth through his veins. The intimacy of that touch ignited a passionate fire within him, a collision of desire and vulnerability that defied all logic. As her body pressed softly against his, the world around them seemed to dissolve into a haze of shared heat and unspoken longing. Before long, the inevitable occurred. Their lips met in a tender exploratory kiss. Ethan closed his eyes, surrendering to the cascade of sensations that flooded his body. With one hand cradling the side of her face, he slowly began to unfasten his shirt, the buttons slipping open in a rhythm that matched the beating of his heart. Their kiss deepened, evolving into a fervent exchange where time itself appeared to stand still. The taste of her lips, sweet and unfamiliar like the first bite of a forbidden fruit, overwhelmed him, while Isabelle, whose presence was now a living, breathing paradox, responded with soft, tentative moans of pleasure. Caught in the throes of passion, Ethan's mind raced as he realized the significance of this encounter. It was a moment that defied all expectations, a collision of lives that had been kept apart by secrets, sacrifices, and a lifetime of calculated restraint. In a brief interlude of tenderness, he whispered an apology when he sensed her inexperience. "I'm sorry," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But she, with a look of quiet resolve and an encouraging whisper, simply urged him to continue. "Go on." The night unfolded like a series of intimate vignettes, marked by moments of heated passion, gentle caresses, and confessions whispered in the darkness. Hours melted away in a slow, rhythmic dance of pleasure and vulnerability. When the first light of dawn began to creep through the window, Ethan reluctantly released his embrace. He held her close for a few lingering moments, his heart still ensnared by the memory of their encounter, before eventually allowing himself to drift into sleep. The woman, having given her silent, unspoken identity, remained nameless, even as the night closed around them. Meanwhile, in the quiet aftermath of their entanglement, Isabelle stirred from her restless sleep. Slowly, she opened her eyes, her vision blurred with the residue of dreams and the stark reality of the present. Carefully, with a mix of tenderness and regret, she disentangled herself from the lingering warmth of Ethan's embrace. Every movement was measured, cautious not to disturb his slumber. With a deep, shuddering breath, she freed her leg from under his arm, her eyes welling up with tears as she silently prayed that he would continue to sleep, sparing her the agony of being discovered in such a vulnerable state. Pain radiated through her body, a cruel reminder of the physical and emotional toll of the night's events. She glanced down to see the remnants of the delicate lingerie scattered on the floor, torn and discarded like fragments of a lost innocence. A wave of anguish and regret washed over her as she rose unsteadily from the bed, wincing with every step. Determined to salvage what little dignity she had left, Isabelle hurried to the wardrobe and rummaged through its contents, searching desperately for something to cover herself. Finally, she found a long-sleeved shirt and a pair of boxer shorts, which she quickly donned, her movements rapid and mechanical as she tried to silence the echo of her shattered dreams. Without looking back, she gathered her bag and the clothes she had discarded earlier, her heart heavy with resignation. A taxi soon pulled up outside the building, its headlights briefly illuminating her tear-streaked face as she stepped into the back seat. Once settled, she retrieved her phone and typed out a message to Miss Victoria, a final farewell to a chapter of her life steeped in pain and sacrifice. "I'm leaving the job, Mom. Thank you for everything, but please respect my wish to bury this in the past. I'm going to start a new life," she texted, with a trembling certainty. Almost immediately, Miss Victoria responded with promises of confidentiality and apologies that offered little comfort to Isabelle's wounded spirit. In the quiet moments that followed, the taxi carried her through the darkened city streets until she found herself in front of a modest drugstore. Pausing at the entrance, she signaled the driver to stop. Stepping out into the cool night air, she forced herself to make the necessary detour to purchase pain relievers and fever medication, a small but vital act of self-care in the midst of overwhelming despair. With her heart heavy and her body aching, she finally returned to her modest apartment, the weight of her recent experiences etched into every step. The next morning, as pale sunlight filtered through the curtains, Ethan awoke with a sense of disorientation. The bed, once a cradle of shared intimacy, now lay empty, the absence of the mysterious woman a painful reminder of the transient nature of the night's passion. Roused by a mounting irritation and the nagging need for answers, he searched the apartment meticulously. His frustration grew with every empty room and every unexplained detail until he finally found himself dialing Victoria once more. "Damn it, Victoria, please just tell me who she is," he growled into the phone, his voice laced with anger and bewilderment. On the other end, Victoria's sigh came heavy with resignation. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but she made me promise I'd never reveal anything about her. She needed my help, so I helped. The deal's done. and she doesn't want any more trouble," she explained. Ethan's anger bubbled anew as he pressed for more information. "You really won't tell me, will you?" he demanded, his tone both incredulous and exasperated. With a teasing lilt, Victoria replied, "Nope, dear brother, and now that I know you really do like women, I'm relieved. Our mother and I had all these crazy fears." Before he could respond, she ended the conversation with a final, playful remark that only deepened his frustration. With a heavy sigh, Ethan slammed his phone down, left alone with a crimson stain on his bedsheet, a silent testament to the events that had transpired, a memory that now stirred a grudging smile amidst his vexation. In the weeks that followed, life began to shift in unexpected ways. Helen, Isabelle's ailing mother, showed gradual signs of recovery, and after 3 arduous weeks, the news arrived that she was officially a cancer survivor. Isabelle's celebration of this hard-won victory was bittersweet, a moment of hope tempered by the lingering scars of the past. Helen, though weakened by her ordeal, embraced her daughter with tears of gratitude and whispered thanks for the unwavering support that had brought them to this point. Standing outside the familiar, time-worn house they had managed to rebuild, the mother and daughter exchanged heartfelt words of love and relief. "Thank you for never giving up on me, baby," Helen murmured, her voice trembling with emotion as she held Isabelle in a tight embrace. Isabelle, with a smile that belied the storm of emotions within her, replied, "I'm just so happy you're completely healed, Mum." Their tender reunion was interrupted by the arrival of Henry, a kind-hearted mason who had come to help with the repairs of the old family house. Accompanied by his 2 grown sons, Henry's presence added a note of practicality and warmth to the household. The old house, once a sanctuary of childhood memories, now marred by years of neglect, was in dire need of renovation. Although the prospect of reconstruction was daunting, it also carried the promise of a fresh start. "Maybe we should build our place with cement too, Mum," Isabelle suggested quietly, over a simple supper of chicken soup that she and Helen had lovingly prepared. Helen, ever the pragmatist, nodded in agreement. "Whatever you two think is best, I'm fine with it," she said with a gentle smile, her eyes reflecting both hope and resignation. After dinner, as the evening deepened into night, Henry produced a ripe Leo fruit from a basket and began to cut it into pieces. The sweet aroma that filled the room was meant to evoke comfort and family togetherness, but for Isabelle, it stirred an unexpected and unsettling reaction. Overwhelmed by a nauseous sensation, she bolted from the table and rushed to the sink, the contents of her stomach expelling with little regard for decorum. Alarmed, Helen hurried after her. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Why are you throwing up?" she asked, her hands gently patting Isabelle's back in an attempt to soothe her. Isabelle, her face pale and eyes downcast, could only mumble a response. "I don't know, Mum," she confessed weakly, though inside, a darker fear began to take shape. In the privacy of that moment, a horrifying thought crept into her mind, a possibility that had haunted her since that fateful night with Ethan. What if the consequences of her desperate act were far more profound than she had ever anticipated? Later that night, as the house settled into a quiet lull, Isabelle lay in her bed, wide awake and tormented by the possibilities of what the morning might reveal. The memory of that passionate, unguarded encounter with Ethan played over in her mind like a relentless film. What if she were now carrying his child, a living testament to a night of desperate choices and unforeseen consequences? Anxiety tightened its grip around her heart as she contemplated the future of a life that might be entirely unplanned, a life born of passion, sacrifice, and a desperate need for redemption. Unable to find solace in the confines of her room, Isabelle rose and stepped outside into the cool night. The silence of the darkened streets was a stark contrast to the tumult within her, and almost immediately she sensed the comforting presence of her mother nearby. "Couldn't sleep?" Helen asked softly, her voice imbued with gentle concern. Isabelle's reply was barely audible as she gazed down at the pavement. After a long, shuddering pause, she turned to face her mother, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mum, there's something I need to tell you," she began, her voice trembling with the weight of a secret that had burdened her for far too long. With every word that escaped her lips, the story unfolded, a tale of desperation, sacrifice, and the irreversible loss of innocence. Isabelle recounted how she had sacrificed her virtue to secure the funds necessary for Helen's life-saving surgery, and now, in the quiet aftermath of that tumultuous night, The fear that she might be pregnant loomed large over her. Shock and sorrow intermingled on Helen's face as she pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Oh, Isabelle, why would you do that?" Helen whispered, her voice heavy with sorrow and maternal anguish. The room seemed to hold its breath as Isabelle, overcome with remorse, choked out a quiet apology. "I didn't know what else to do, Mum. I couldn't let you die," she pleaded, her voice cracking under the strain of her confession. The silence that followed was profound, a fragile moment where the gravity of their shared pain hung suspended in the cool night air. Helen's expression softened as she gently inquired, "So, you really might be pregnant?" Her tone was tender, laced with both concern and cautious hope. Isabelle swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper as she admitted, "I'm not sure. I haven't gotten my period." The uncertainty of her condition left a bitter taste in the night, an unresolved question that promised to alter the course of her already tumultuous life. In the quiet that followed, the two sat together under the muted glow of a street lamp, the bond between them deepened by the shared burdens of sacrifice and love. Each tear that fell carried with it the weight of lost innocence and the possibility of a future that neither had dared to imagine. It was a moment of raw, unfiltered emotion, a turning point in a life already marked by heartbreak and hard-won survival. In the soft twilight of a quiet evening, Helen's gentle squeeze of Isabelle's hand resonated with a promise of unwavering acceptance. "Then we shall find out," Helen murmured, her voice imbued with both sorrow and hope. "I want you to know, my dear, that I have never felt anger toward you. Never." Her tender reassurance washed over Isabelle like a balm, easing the raw edges of her guilt and despair. Helen's eyes shone with unshed tears as she continued, "Let's focus on caring for this precious grandchild of mine. Please, don't let worry overtake you. Stress will only harm the little one." Her embrace, warm and steadfast, enveloped Isabelle in a cocoon of maternal love and understanding. In that moment, as their souls connected over shared vulnerability, Isabelle could almost forget the harshness of her recent choices. Yet the truth of her confession still burned in her heart, its implications echoing like a distant drumbeat. Through quiet laughter mixed with tears, Helen asked with a teasing lilt, "If you truly are expecting, then who is the father?" The question hung in the air like a delicate ornament, shimmering with both curiosity and affection. Isabelle's cheeks flushed crimson as she confessed with raw honesty, "All I know is his name is Ethan Eleanor." The name, spoken softly, carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken secrets. Helen only nodded, her eyes twinkling with a mix of mischief and tenderness. "Is he handsome, my child?" she teased, lightening the gravity of the conversation with her playful tone. Isabelle couldn't help but let out a small squeak in response, a sound half embarrassed, half amused, and Helen's laughter soon filled the room like a joyful melody. "Come along now," Helen urged, rising from her seat with gentle insistence. "Let's go inside and get you some rest. You know that a woman expecting such a blessing should never be awake too late." As they walked back into the warmly lit foyer of their home, now known as Evergreen Cottage, a name that had been chosen to shield its true origins, Isabelle felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was acutely aware of how fortunate she was that her mother embraced her with unconditional love, free of anger or judgment. Days slowly melted into weeks, and with the passage of time, the once crumbling old house was transformed into a vibrant, revitalized haven. The renovations were finally complete, and beside the freshly painted walls of Evergreen Cottage, a new establishment, a quaint laundry shop, had been built, fulfilling Helen's long-held dream. Next door, a small convenience store rose too, a venture that Isabelle had poured her heart and soul into during the months when her energy was sapped by the early signs of pregnancy. Unable to continue working at her previous job as her condition worsened, Isabelle devoted herself to nurturing these new businesses, hopeful that they would secure her financial future. A routine checkup at the local OB/GYN, now rebranded as the Aurora Women's Health Clinic, confirmed what Isabelle had long feared and silently anticipated. She was indeed expecting a child. In that sterile, softly lit examination room, the doctor's words confirmed her suspicions, and she felt an overwhelming mix of relief, anxiety, and hope. Isabelle decided then to share the news with only one person, her beloved mother. Neither her closest friend Rachel, nor even the enigmatic Ms. Victoria, who had played a dubious role in her past, would know. The world of Ethan alone, with its distant and complicated ties, was not one she intended to disturb with her secret. As the months slipped by and Isabelle's pregnancy advanced toward its inevitable conclusion, the day finally arrived when she brought a tiny, fragile life into the world. In a modest hospital room bathed in soft pastels, Isabelle cradled her newborn son, naming him Caleb, a name chosen with hope and the promise of new beginnings. Caleb was as adorable as a whispered dream, his delicate features a mirror of his mysterious father. "You haven't inherited a single trace of me," Isabelle murmured tenderly, half joking as she compared his innocent features to the rugged, distant image of Ethan. "You look just like your dad." Her voice trailed off in wonder as she regarded the tiny bundle with both pride and melancholy. One quiet afternoon, as Isabelle rested at home with Caleb nestled in her arms, Helen stepped into the room with an expression that was both joyful and wistful. "I haven't even had the chance to hold my grandson while he's awake," the older woman fretted softly, her gaze flicking between Isabelle and the bustling shop that had become her second home. Isabelle managed a teasing grin, adopting a high-pitched, playful tone as she cooed at Caleb. "Grandma, you're always busy." The child's innocent babbling, like a soft echo of their shared past, filled the room with a bittersweet harmony. Yet the light-hearted moment was swiftly marred by a sudden shift in tone when Helen's smile turned into a look of sincere concern. "Isabelle, are you truly not planning to tell your child's father about him? Caleb deserves to know where he comes from. A complete family is something every child needs." The gentle warmth in Isabelle's smile faltered, replaced by a sorrowful resignation. "Maybe I will someday," she replied, her words a delicate lie wrapped in uncertainty. Deep down, she felt that bridging the gap between her and Ethan's worlds was an impossibility, a chasm too wide to cross. Ethan belonged to an entirely different realm, one where commitment was fleeting and the past was buried deep under layers of indifference and cynicism. Meanwhile, Ethan's own life had become a portrait of restless searching and emotional desolation. Despite his meteoric rise as a highly regarded attorney, renowned for his passionate pro bono work and dedication to the underprivileged, his personal life was marked by a ceaseless flitting between fleeting romances. Never had he allowed himself to be truly tethered by love, and his heart had become a wanderer, never settling, always in pursuit of something he couldn't quite name. One sultry afternoon, the relentless pressure of his own solitude compelled Ethan to accept an invitation from his dear friend Noah to meet at an upscale bar, a sleek, modern establishment known as the Elysian Lounge. There, in a private, dimly lit section, Ethan found his old friends Noah and Lucas, the latter sporting a vivacious companion clinging affectionately to his arm. Ethan greeted them with a casual nod, seating himself beside Noah, and soon downed a shot of amber whiskey in one gulp, the burn a welcome distraction from the loneliness gnawing at his soul. Lucas, ever the jester, began teasing Noah about the impending nuptials that loomed over his life. "If that were to happen to me, bro, I'd never even consider it. Once you're married, you become a prisoner to the mundane," he quipped, his tone light but edged with a hint of cynicism. Ethan, leaning back with a smirk, nodded in quiet agreement. "He's not wrong, Noah," he said, his voice tinged with both humor and a trace of self-reflection. As the conversation veered towards personal lives and the inevitability of commitments, Ethan couldn't help but remark with a playful yet sharp wit, "Your fiancée Tiffany spends all her time shopping and partying. I'd wager she couldn't even fry an egg if her life depended on it." The remark elicited a series of chuckles around the table, but soon, Noah's sigh of resignation filled the space between them. "If I defy my parents' wishes, I'll be cut off completely," Noah lamented, his voice rising in a mix of frustration and reluctant acceptance. "They'll strip away everything. Oh, you know what I mean." With a frustrated gesture that spoke volumes of his inner turmoil, Noah continued, "So I'm pushing through with it, even if it means living on bread and water." Ethan and Lucas exchanged knowing glances, their silent camaraderie an acknowledgement of the sacrifices demanded by familial expectations. Amid the laughter and the fleeting moments of revelry, Tiffany, in a moment of half-intoxicated giggles, leaned in to whisper something to Lucas. The conspiratorial exchange between them brought forth a knowing smile from Lucas, who then announced, "I'm off to blow off some steam," before departing with a playful wink. As the evening wore on, Ethan found himself increasingly alienated by the clamor of the bar and the incessant buzzing of his phone, each call a reminder of the women from his recent escapades. Eventually, weary and disillusioned, he turned off his phone and left the bar, stepping into the cool night air with a heavy heart. His journey took him back to the sprawling mansion he had purchased, a grandiose abode that, despite its impressive size, echoed with the loneliness of an empty soul. Upon arriving at the mansion, a place he had meticulously designed to reflect his own grandeur, Ethan discovered his mother waiting in the living room. "Thank goodness you're home," she greeted him, her voice laced with both relief and the persistent nagging of familial duty. She gently prodded him about visiting his estranged sister, Victoria, who now resided in a distant city, Los Angeles. "She misses you terribly, Ethan. And how long do you plan to live in solitude? You owe it to us to build a family. A grandchild would do you well," she chided, half teasing, half pleading. Ethan, exhausted by the weight of her expectations, offered a tired smile and a quick kiss on her cheek before retreating to his room. There, in the quiet solitude of his private sanctuary, he took a long hot shower, a ritual to wash away the night's remnants, and then lay down on his lavish bed. Above him, a meticulously painted portrait of the mysterious woman adorned his ceiling, a constant reminder of that unforgettable night of passion. "You're so hard to find, my lady," he whispered into the darkness, his words thick with longing and regret. "When will you return the heart you stole that night?" The question lingered in the silence until sleep finally claimed him. In a parallel universe of maternal love and worry, early one morning Helen's gentle voice pierced the stillness. "Mom, Caleb's fever is dangerously high," she declared, her hand trembling as she pressed it against the 3-year-old's forehead. The fever, which had seemed to recede, had returned with a vengeance, igniting fresh waves of panic in the hearts of those who cared for him. Jolted awake by his mother's urgent call, Isabelle rushed to Caleb's side, her eyes wide with alarm as she confirmed that the little boy's temperature was spiking alarmingly. "We must take him to the hospital immediately," Helen insisted, her voice firm and laced with maternal determination. Without a moment's hesitation, Isabelle scooped Caleb into her arms. Helen quickly called out for Leo, a young man who, like a guardian angel, owned a modest car used for essential deliveries in their neighborhood. "You go on ahead to the hospital, dear," Helen instructed gently. "I'll gather everything we might need in case Caleb must be admitted." Isabelle, her voice tense yet resolute, nodded and climbed into the car with Leo at the wheel. "Let's go, Leo. Please drive as fast as you can." The drive to the hospital was a blur of anxious thoughts and tear-streaked reflections, as Isabelle's mind raced with every possible outcome. Upon arrival, they rushed into the emergency department where a team of nurses immediately whisked Caleb away for urgent care. In the sterile environment of the hospital, the attending doctor quickly diagnosed the little boy with dengue fever, a diagnosis that sent a fresh wave of dread through Isabelle's heart. "Your son needs a blood transfusion immediately," the doctor announced, his tone clinical yet empathetic. Desperation drove Isabelle to a heart-wrenching decision as she pleaded, "Please, take my blood, whatever's necessary to make him better." The doctor, recognizing the gravity of the situation, led her to a room where tests were conducted to determine the compatibility of her blood with Caleb's. After what seemed like an eternity suspended in anxious silence, the doctor returned with devastating news. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said gravely, "but you're not a match. Your blood type is O positive, and your son's is AB positive. It appears that his father must share his blood type." The question struck Isabelle like a physical blow. "Where is your husband?" the doctor inquired, his tone matter-of-fact yet laced with urgency. Isabelle's throat tightened as she hesitated. "He's back in Chicago," she finally managed to say, the words heavy with resignation. "You must contact him immediately. Your child needs his father's blood." The doctor's gaze was firm as he concluded, "I have other patients to attend to, but please do this as soon as possible." Overwhelmed by the cascade of emotions and physical weakness, Isabelle collapsed onto a nearby bench. Moments later, Helen arrived, her heart aching with maternal sorrow as Isabelle recounted every detail. "I know you're scared, my child, but Caleb needs his father's blood. This is not for you, it's for him," Helen implored softly, her eyes brimming with tears. "I can't bear the thought of losing my grandson." With a silent nod, Isabelle gathered her strength and, with Helen's gentle urging, resolved to make the journey to Chicago. Before leaving, Isabelle pressed a tender kiss to Caleb's forehead and whispered, "Mommy will be back soon, okay?" Cradling him for a few long moments, she fought to maintain composure and calm in the midst of chaos. Once outside, she made a call to her dearest friend Rachel, explaining the situation with heartfelt apologies for having kept her pregnancy and the existence of her child a secret for so long. Though shocked, Rachel's understanding and compassion shone through, comforting Isabelle as she arranged to get a ride from her cousin Jake to the bus terminal bound for Chicago. As the bus pulled away into the dark, silent night, Isabelle closed her eyes and prayed fervently. "Please, Lord, let everything turn out okay. Let there be no more problems." Hours later, past midnight, she arrived in Chicago. Rachel greeted her at the terminal with a tight, emotional hug. "I'm so mad at you," Rachel burst out as they parted briefly. "We've been best friends forever, yet you hid this from me." With pleading eyes and a voice heavy with remorse, Isabelle apologized. "I'm so sorry, Rachel." After a brief pause, Rachel's exasperated tone softened. "Fine, I forgive you." Their conversation soon shifted as they discussed the next steps. Heading straight to the imposing headquarters of Eleanor Corporation, Isabelle's heart pounded as they approached the tall, glass-clad building, each step echoing the gravity of her decision. "I'm so nervous," she admitted softly to Rachel. "But I have to do this for—" At that moment, the future hung in the balance, a future fraught with uncertainty, sacrifice, and the hope of reconciliation with the past. Their journey was only just beginning, and Isabelle, bolstered by a newfound resolve and the quiet strength of those who loved her, stepped forward into the unknown. In the grand foyer of the towering Meridian Towers headquarters, Isabelle's heart pounded as she stepped up to the front desk. The guard's steady confirmation, "Ethan Eleanor, CEO, is inside," sent a rush of relief through her, a momentary reprieve from the tumult that had dominated her life for so long. Yet, as she prepared to take one more determined step forward, a sudden chill of apprehension seized her. She froze as if time itself had slowed. The polished elevator doors slid open, and there he stood, the very man whose image had haunted her dreams night after night, whose presence stirred memories and emotions deep within her soul. Ethan, who had been en route to the rooftop to assist a friend, halted abruptly at the unexpected sight of Isabelle. A surge of inexplicable happiness coursed through him, and without thinking, the words burst from his lips. "It's you, Isabelle," he murmured, his voice a mixture of wonder and longing. Isabelle, her lips trembling and biting them in self-control, barely managed a whispered reply. "Rachel," she implored, her voice soft as she motioned for their mutual friend to give them a moment. Rachel, understanding the gravity of the situation, mumbled an agreement and stepped aside, leaving Isabelle's heart to beat wildly in anticipation as Ethan strode nearer. Her eyes dropped to the polished floor and her palms grew clammy with nerves as she tried to steady herself. "Calm down, Isabelle," she repeated in her mind, urging herself to find courage. Ethan was now so close that she could see the gleam of his immaculate shoes, the tailored cut of his suit, and the sincerity in his eyes. "My lady," he said once more in a respectful tone, and the sound of his voice was like a gentle caress, leaving her nearly breathless. A single tear escaped down her cheek as she mustered the strength to speak. "I have something to tell you, sir," she managed, her voice wavering yet determined. Ethan's face softened instantly, and he reached out, wiping away the tear with a tender thumb. "I'm listening, my lady," he said, his tone gentle and inviting. Neither of them cared that a few curious employees were watching the unfolding scene with barely concealed interest. Through tears and trembling words, Isabelle disclosed the truth that had weighed upon her for so long. "The night we spent together, it had consequences. I have a precious, adorable little boy." Her voice broke as she continued. "We have a son, sir, and he needs you right now. He has dengue and he needs your blood." In that moment, it was as if the world tilted on its axis for Ethan. Every whispered rumor and secret fear now transformed into a profound call to action. Perhaps that was why, in the quiet recesses of his heart, he had felt inexplicably drawn to the innocence of children in recent times. Stunned by the revelation, Ethan's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he asked, "Where is our son?" His voice trembled with the weight of emotions he had long buried. "He's in Kansas," Isabelle replied, her voice quivering with both regret and sorrow. "In my hometown," she added softly, the admission piercing the silence between them. Before she could continue, Ethan's resolve took over. Grabbing her hand firmly, he ushered her out of the building with a sense of urgency. He quickly collected the keys from the guard and sped off in his sleek car, simultaneously placing a call to his private pilot to have his helicopter readied. "Why tell me only now?" Ethan demanded as he drove, the hurt in his voice unmistakable. His tone was laced with disappointment and longing, as if he had been robbed not only of time but of a connection that might have changed everything. "Because I was ashamed," Isabelle admitted in a hushed voice, her confession carrying the bitter taste of regret. "We barely knew each other. We had no relationship that would have made me think to tell you sooner. And I was hired that night. I was paid." Her words fell like heavy stones, and Ethan's expression betrayed both disbelief and heartache. "You should have told me anyway," he murmured, regret tightening his chest as he considered the lost years and opportunities to help raise and care for the child who was now his blood. His voice, filled with a mixture of anguish and resolve, spoke of the potential that might have been, had he known sooner. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, before Ethan, with a quiet gentleness, asked, "May I know your name now?" In a barely audible whisper, Isabelle replied, "Isabelle." The simplicity of her name belied the storm of emotions behind it. "That's a beautiful name," Ethan said, smiling with an authenticity that filled the cramped space between them. A warm, unfamiliar thrill pulsed through Isabelle, and though her heart pounded with uncertainty, she felt a spark of hope. Their journey continued as Ethan led Isabelle to the helicopter pad. With careful consideration, he assisted her inside the cabin, even placing a pair of noise-canceling headphones over her ears to offer a semblance of comfort during the flight. "Thank you," she whispered softly, gratitude mingling with the tremor in her voice. "Always welcome, my lady," Ethan replied, winking at her playfully. The pilot's steady hands took over as the helicopter lifted into the sky, granting them a 2-hour flight that seemed to suspend time itself. Throughout the journey, Ethan's gaze lingered on Isabelle's angelic face, his heart thumping with every glance. The closeness, the intimacy of the moment, and the shared silence spoke volumes more than any words ever could. As the hours wore on, exhaustion claimed Isabelle. Her eyelids drooped, and despite her inner struggles to remain awake and alert, the comforting pressure of Ethan's hands on her shoulder eventually guided her head to rest against his chest. For a brief moment, her mind protested in the depths of her thoughts, but the weariness was overwhelming. Sleep claimed her gently as they flew onward. After a long 2-hour journey, the helicopter landed near a modest hospital building. Ethan helped Isabelle out of the aircraft, and the pilot, ever courteous, asked for permission to conduct a brief inspection of the surroundings. Ethan handed him a small sum of money, and then he and Isabelle secured a ride in a tricycle, a quirky but reliable mode of transport in this part of town, to the hospital. Ethan, standing at 6'2", found the cramped space of the tricycle a challenge. "Ow!" he grunted as his head bumped the roof on a particularly jarring bump in the road, eliciting a wince from Isabelle. She reached up instinctively, pressing her hand to the tender spot on his head. "Sorry," he murmured, forcing a smile as he tried to downplay the discomfort. The ride stretched on for what felt like an eternity, half an hour of cramped quarters and shared anxiety, until at last they arrived at the hospital. Isabelle dashed inside with renewed determination, while Ethan followed closely behind. She soon found the doctor who had been examining Caleb, her precious son, and together they awaited news. After testing, the doctor returned with the welcome news that Ethan's blood was a match for Caleb's transfusion. Relief mingled with a sense of renewed purpose as they waited outside Caleb's room. Soon, Nurse Amelia emerged to inform them, "You can go in now, Isabelle, sir." The blood transfusion had been successfully completed, and Caleb was resting comfortably. Isabelle thanked Nurse Amelia before asking where her mother was. Amelia explained that Helen had just stepped out to purchase lunch. With heart still pounding, Isabelle and Ethan entered the softly lit hospital room where Caleb lay asleep. Isabelle reached out tenderly to touch her son's cheek, grateful that his fever had subsided and his skin felt cooler against her fingertips. Turning toward Ethan, she offered him a small, relieved smile. Ethan, for his part, struggled to contain a torrent of emotions. When he saw Caleb's tiny form, a living embodiment of the night that had so altered their fates, he felt a powerful jolt of recognition and responsibility. "His features," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "He looks so much like me." Tears welled in his eyes as he tenderly grasped Caleb's small hand. "Caleb, my boy," he whispered, his voice cracking with both joy and sorrow. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to come home. Work kept me away for too long. Are you mad at me?" Caleb, in his innocent way, shook his head and a soft smile illuminated his face. Ethan gently wiped away the tears from Caleb's cheek and reassured him, "Daddy's not leaving you and Mommy again, okay? We'll be a family. Are you happy to meet me?" Caleb nodded eagerly, his wide eyes brimming with trust and unfiltered joy. "I'm so happy, Daddy," he chirped, his words echoing in the quiet room as the pair embraced each other, both crying freely. Isabelle, witnessing the tender reunion of father and son, felt her heart swell with conflicting emotions: relief, sorrow, hope, and a newfound sense of responsibility for the future. She recalled how often Caleb had innocently inquired about his father and how she had once evaded the question by saying he was away working hard for them. Now, at long last, his father stood before them. Helen, ever the supportive matriarch, peeked through the door and stepped back to give Ethan and Caleb some private space to bond. "He's very handsome," Helen remarked softly, a note of pride in her voice. "The father of my grandchild." Isabel's cheeks flushed as she murmured, "No wonder Caleb is such a good-looking boy." Helen then gently touched Isabel's shoulder and asked, "Daughter, what do you plan to do now?" Isabel's gaze drifted back to the door, uncertainty mingling with resolve. "I don't know, Mom," she admitted softly, "but I do know I won't keep my son from his father." Helen nodded approvingly. "It's the right thing to do. You know he has rights too." Lowering her head in thoughtful submission, Isabelle whispered, "Yes, Mom, I understand." 3 days later, Caleb was discharged from the hospital. The day also marked his birthday, a small celebration that Helen decided to host. She returned home to cook a simple celebratory meal for her grandson, and, with playful teasing, for her future son-in-law. Ethan, ever the generous soul, bought a cake nearly as large as Caleb himself, much to the delight of the little boy. Surrounded by laughter and the joyful strains of "Happy Birthday," the family gathered to share a meal and celebrate new beginnings. Later that day, Ethan sat down with Helen and Uncle Henry to discuss the prospect of courting Isabelle, a formality he wished to pursue wholeheartedly. Both Helen and Henry gave their heartfelt blessings, and in that moment, Ethan turned to Caleb and asked, "Are you happy, buddy?" "So happy, Daddy," Caleb chirped, as he played with the toys Ethan had thoughtfully brought along. Ruffling Caleb's hair gently, Ethan then proposed, "What if I invited you and Mommy to come live with me in Chicago? Would you like that?" Caleb's eyes lit up at the prospect, and he replied excitedly, "Yes! Mommy's friend from Chicago told me there are tall buildings, big malls, and even a PlayStation." Ethan chuckled warmly, promising, "That's right, we can go tomorrow along with Mommy. My mother will be thrilled when she meets you." Caleb, his eyes shining with delight, wrapped his small arms around Ethan's waist in a gesture that spoke of pure, unfiltered love. Later, as the evening settled softly around them, Isabelle re-entered the room with a radiant smile as she witnessed the tender scene of father and son. Ethan, cradling Caleb gently, rocked him to sleep on the bed. Turning softly to Isabelle, he confided, "You know, I can be quite a husband too." Isabelle laughed quietly and teased, "You're skipping ahead to marriage and you just got here." Ethan, his eyes sparkling with sincere affection, turned to face her and said, "Even if we're in our 60s one day, I will still court you. Nothing will be rushed between us again. This time, I want everything to be done right." Reaching for her hand, he added, "You should know that ever since that unforgettable night, I have not been able to forget you. I fell in love with you that very evening. You gave me such happiness. Your name has been the only one my heart has called." Isabelle swallowed hard, feeling her heart surge with emotion. Ethan continued gently, "I want you and our son to come with me to Chicago. We'll enroll him in school there, and my mother and Victoria will be overjoyed to learn that the daring plan they once hatched produced an angel." Tears glistened in Isabelle's eyes as she nodded in silent acceptance. Ethan's face split into a joyous grin and he pulled her into a tender, heartfelt embrace. "Thank you, my lady," he whispered, pressing his lips softly against hers in a kiss so gentle it made her knees weak. Lost in that moment, Isabelle allowed herself to melt into the kiss, her entire being filled with hope for a future they could finally share. Suddenly, the door opened with a gasp, and Helen stepped in, breaking the intimacy with a playful admonition. If you two plan on giving me another grandchild, please find a more private spot next time." Startled, Ethan and Isabelle stammered apologies, their cheeks burning with embarrassment. Helen laughed softly and said, "Just remember, your little boy is right here. Show some respect to us, dear ones." With that, she bid them goodnight and stepped out, leaving Isabelle to hide her flushed face in her hands. "I'll just go to sleep now," she murmured softly. Ethan replied with a grin, "You can stay in the other room, my beautiful lady." They exchanged tender goodnights. Ethan leaned down to press a soft kiss to her forehead and whispered, "Sweet dreams, my lady," before slipping away quietly. In the soft light of early morning, as the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, Isabelle awoke to the gentle warmth of love and a sense of promise that filled every corner of her new life. She glanced down at little Caleb, sound asleep and nestled close beside her, his peaceful breathing a quiet reminder of the fragile miracle they now shared. The night before had been a whirlwind of emotions and new beginnings, and as she lay there cocooned in the soft embrace of memory and hope, she could almost feel the heartbeat of a future yet to unfold. When Isabelle finally rose, she discovered that all of their belongings had been carefully packed and arranged by someone who cared. A loving note on the luggage reading, "Mom and I got your things together." Standing there with a thoughtful, almost wistful expression was Ethan, whose steady gaze and gentle smile spoke volumes about his unspoken commitment. He explained that his mother couldn't join them immediately. The responsibility of managing their store and the freshly opened laundry shop, now reimagined as evergreen cleaners, lay on her capable shoulders. "She says she'll follow once we're married," he added softly, his tone tender and reassuring. Isabelle felt a familiar flush spread across her cheeks. The thought of marriage had once filled her with uncertainty, but now, amidst all this change, it also brought a delicate thrill. "You and all this talk of marriage?" she muttered under her breath, averting her eyes as if trying to hide her mixed emotions. Ethan chuckled, his laughter light and contagious, easing her worries even as he continued to explain their morning plans. "I'll wake Caleb so we can all have breakfast together," he said with a gentle insistence that made her heart flutter, a promise of unity and shared love. More than a meal, breakfast became a small ritual of reassurance and connection. Isabelle walked into Caleb's room at just the right moment as the little boy began to stir. "Good morning, sweetheart," she whispered, leaning in to press a tender kiss on his forehead. "Good morning, Mama," came his sleepy reply, his voice soft and innocent. When he rubbed his eyes and asked, "Where's Daddy?" she answered with quiet simplicity, "He's outside. We were waiting for you so we can all eat together." Caleb's small legs propelled him out of bed in a flurry of youthful energy, and Isabelle felt a surge of pride as she watched Ethan lift him up, planting a gentle kiss on his brow, a gesture that filled her with both warmth and hope. Together, they sat down to a modest breakfast with Helen, whose steadfast presence had been the cornerstone of their everyday life. As the conversation meandered through familiar topics, Isabelle couldn't help but ask in a soft tone, "Mom, you're really not coming with us today?" Helen shook her head with a smile, explaining that she could not abandon the responsibilities of managing their livelihood. "Our customers would riot if they found no one to do their laundry," she joked lightly, easing the tension with humor. "I'll come later, once Henry is able to manage everything. Don't worry, dear." Despite the playful banter, Isabelle's heart ached a little at the thought of parting from her mother, even as she understood the necessity of their arrangements. After breakfast, Ethan took charge of the logistics, carrying their luggage to a rented van. Gone were the days of cramped, rattling rides in old tricycles. Ethan now preferred a smoother, more secure journey that matched the seriousness of their new chapter. Their next leg of the journey was by helicopter, a long, serene flight that gave them ample time to reflect. The gentle hum of the rotors became a lullaby, and before long, both Isabelle and little Caleb surrendered to sleep again. Ethan's phone buzzed during the flight with a call from his friend Lucas, but he politely declined to answer, promising they'd talk later. His focus remained on the precious cargo beside him, his newfound family, and the mission that lay ahead. Landing in Chicago around 9 in the evening, Ethan refused to let the precious ones slip away from his sight. With determined care, he escorted Isabelle and Caleb directly to his family's mansion, a grand, stately home that had been in the Eleanor family for generations and had recently been given a modern twist to suit his tastes. His plan was to surprise his mother, who had always held a special place in his heart. As they stepped into the mansion's opulent foyer, the shock on Mrs. Eleanor's face was unmistakable. "What on earth?" she gasped, her eyes widening at the sight of Ethan arriving with a sleeping child cradled in his arms. "Who is that little boy?" she demanded softly, her tone a mixture of astonishment and tender curiosity. Ethan's smile was gentle and full of quiet pride as he replied, "He's your grandson, Mom. My son with Isabelle." In that instant, his mother's eyes shone with tears of joy and disbelief. Without hesitation, she enveloped Isabelle in a warm, heartfelt embrace. "Oh, thank God!" she exclaimed, her voice thick with emotion. "I thought my son would never give me a grandchild. Welcome to the family, dear." The words made Isabelle's face warm with a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude, as she accepted the unexpected yet deeply cherished blessing. Mrs. Eleanor's affection didn't stop there. She corrected herself playfully, "I want you to call me Mommy, dear, because you're part of our family now." Overwhelmed, Isabelle could only whisper, "Thank you, Mommy," as the older woman's smile deepened into one of unreserved love. Then, turning to Ethan with motherly authority, Mrs. Eleanor extended her arms and declared, "Let me take him." At once, she recognized the undeniable resemblance between the little boy and Ethan. The evidence of their shared blood was there for all to see as she cradled Caleb, planting gentle kisses on his forehead while murmuring, "What's his name?" Isabelle answered softly, "Caleb, Mummy." "What a wonderful name," Mrs. Eleanor murmured, drawing him closer as she promised to put him to bed soon. "You two can talk about your wedding plans later, because I'm not letting you delay any longer." With that, she bustled off upstairs, leaving Ethan to let out a soft sigh. "Sorry if Mom is a bit too eager," he admitted, a trace of amusement in his voice. Isabelle managed a polite smile in response, though her heart still wrestled with a myriad of emotions. Before Ethan could reply further, his phone rang again. This time it was Lucas, urgently calling about a matter that needed his immediate attention. "I should probably help him," Ethan explained, turning to Isabelle with a tone of reluctant duty. "There's an issue with one of our friends that needs immediate attention. Would it be okay if I leave for a while? I promise I'll be quick." Hearing the sincerity and thoughtfulness in his voice, Isabelle felt a warmth blossom within her. "You don't have to ask me for permission," she insisted, though Ethan's gentle response soon reassured her. "I do, Isabelle. You are the most important woman in my life now, mother of my child, and someone I love deeply. I want you to know where I'm going and what I'm doing." Her cheeks flushed a tender shade of pink, and with a playful smile she said, "Well, just be careful." Leaning in, Ethan allowed her to rise and plant a soft kiss on his cheek. "Thank you, my lady," he whispered, his words imbued with deep affection, before hurrying outside. These days, Ethan drove with a careful grace, no longer tempted by reckless speed, because he knew there were lives, especially his, waiting for him at home. On his way back, he decided to stop at a nearby floral boutique, rebranded as Bloom and Grace, owned by a sister company of his own. Unbeknownst to him, Rachel was managing the store that day. Ethan picked out a bouquet of Isabelle's favorite tulips, their vivid colors a perfect symbol of hope and renewal. The clerk, surprised yet respectful at the unexpected visit, processed the purchase quickly. When Ethan returned home, his mother greeted him with a playful smirk as she took in the sight of the freshly cut flowers. Sheepishly, he asked, "Where's Isabelle?" Mrs. Eleanor directed him to the guest room, where, with quiet anticipation, he opened the door to find Isabelle standing on the terrace, gazing at the twinkling city lights that painted the skyline like a canvas of dreams. "My lady," Ethan said softly as he approached, handing her the bouquet with a reverent smile. "Thank you," she whispered back, holding the tulips close, their delicate fragrance mingling with the cool night air. In that charged moment, their eyes locked, each glance filled with unspoken promises and tender longing. Both paused, glancing down at their lips as if remembering the taste of each other's affection. "I love you, Isabelle," Ethan finally declared, his voice tender and resolute as he leaned in closer. "And I love you too," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with the certainty of her heart. Their lips met in a kiss that carried all the weight of their shared journey, the pain of separation, the hope of reconciliation, and the joy of rediscovery. Isabelle closed her eyes as Ethan deepened the kiss, her knees growing weak under the intensity of their connection. In one smooth, tender motion, he scooped her up and carried her inside, laying her gently on the bed. As she looked upward, she noticed a painted portrait on the ceiling, a delicate reminder of that fateful night when Ethan had first been captivated by her beauty. She began to speak, but Ethan silenced her with another kiss, so soft and profound that it seemed to lift her into a state of bliss. They whispered each other's names, their voices a quiet duet that recalled the night when fate bound their hearts together. The next day, Ethan revealed that they would attend Lucas's wedding, a ceremony where he was to serve as a groomsman. Isabelle laughed softly at how the circle of their friends seemed to be merging into a tapestry of unions and shared futures. Ethan allowed the driver to take over the wheel so he could focus entirely on the tender moments with Isabelle and Caleb. Their arrival at the grand historic church, reborn as the Sanctuary of Grace, was nothing short of majestic. After the lengthy and heartfelt ceremony, Ethan excused himself with a promise of a surprise of his own later that afternoon. True to his word, later that day, Ethan took Isabelle to a beautiful house he had recently purchased, an elegant residence he envisioned as the foundation of their new home. Inside, the lights had been dimmed for a moment of mystery, only to be switched on in a spectacular reveal. Family and friends were gathered in a joyful circle around Isabelle. Ethan carefully set Caleb down before dropping to one knee. With trembling hands, he presented a ring, a sparkling token of their future, that had been chosen with the loving guidance of his mother. Overcome with emotion, Isabelle covered her mouth in astonishment, tears streaming as Ethan spoke from his heart. "Isabelle, my lady, my love," he began, his voice rich with sincerity. "Let's make that dream of a complete family come true. Will you be mine for the rest of our lives?" Her answer, spontaneous and overflowing with love, came without hesitation. "Yes, Ethan, yes. I'd marry you anywhere. I love you." Amid cheers and the gentle clapping of loved ones, Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and sealed the moment with a passionate kiss. Little Caleb giggled and hid his eyes, and soon the room was filled with laughter, happy tears, and the unspoken promise of a shared future. In the ensuing month, the couple devoted themselves to the final preparations for their wedding. Isabelle discovered that she was expecting another child, a joyous surprise that only deepened their love. Ethan embraced his new roles with fervor. He was not only a devoted husband and caring father, but also a steadfast guardian of their expanding family. His mother took over the family business, ensuring that every legacy was maintained, while he focused on nurturing the bonds of love at home. Years later, the family found themselves on a serene beach, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of gold and lavender. Ethan and Isabelle sat side by side, their children, Caleb and a sweet little daughter, dozing peacefully in their arms as the gentle waves lapped at the shore. In that quiet moment of contentment, Ethan and Isabelle shared a tender kiss, a silent reaffirmation of the love that had carried them through every trial and triumph. Their life as a married couple was a tapestry woven with threads of kindness, devotion, and warmth. Isabelle often reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her to this point, a journey filled with heartbreak, sacrifice, and ultimately redemption. Every day, she thanked God for blessing her with a man who was not only kind, devoted, loving, and hardworking, but also a responsible father and partner. Together, they built a life defined by love and mutual respect, a life where every challenge was met hand in hand and every joy was shared as a family. At night, as they lay in their luxurious yet cozy bedroom, the soft whispers of promises and dreams filled the space. Ethan would often recount how, even on the darkest nights, he had never ceased to believe in the power of love, how that single, fateful encounter had transformed him entirely. Isabelle, with her heart full of gratitude and tenderness, would simply smile and hold him closer, knowing that their love was the foundation upon which they built not just a home, but a future filled with hope. And so, as the years unfurled, Ethan, Isabelle, and their children thrived together, a testament to the strength of family and the miracles that occur when hearts are open and true. Their journey was a mosaic of trials and triumphs, a constant reminder that even in the midst of struggle, love could illuminate the darkest paths and lead them all to a place of joy and fulfillment. This, then, was the story of how two souls found each other amid adversity, created a family against all odds, and built a life full of meaning, purpose, and unwavering love. It was a story of redemption, of second chances, and of a promise that no matter what storms life might bring, the warmth of love would always light the way forward. Their journey wasn't just about romance, it was about redemption, courage, and the power of choosing love, even when the past feels too heavy to carry. From pain and sacrifice to healing and family, this story reminds us that no matter how lost we feel, love has a way of finding us again, sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Now it's your turn. Have you ever had to make a hard choice for someone you love? Or do you believe in second chances and fated love? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another emotional story like this one. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that remind us of what truly matters.